What's going on, folks? I am here once again, Dominic Barnes. I am here with another one of my top 10 countdown lists. And today I will be giving you my top 10 cartoons countdown, part one. Yes, judging by this will be part one. I was making this list, and the more I thought about it, I had so many different cartoons. So I figured, hey, why not break it up, two different lists? So with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and jump right into it with number 10, which is Rocket Power. Who can forget one of the most classic lines from Sam, aka the Squid? They got sand in the potato salad. I will never forget that line just because he was so serious and so dramatic with it. But basically, for those who don't know, Rocket Power was a show that was on Nickelodeon. It was pretty much following the adventures of four kids, which is Otto, Reggie, Twister, and Sam, who's pretty much all about skateboarding and surfing. The rare occasion they was in snow, they'll snowboard and street hockey. So they usually dealt with problems in a very creative way, and most of the time it was always some kind of deep, meaningful lesson about life behind it. So can't forget about Tito and Raymundo. Raymundo was Otto and Reggie's pops, and Tito was pretty much, like I guess their Mr. Mom, I guess, because they didn't have a mom, and they never really got into that. So even to this day, I still wonder what happened to their mother. But to me, Tito was one of my favorites because you always knew he was about to say something weird because he'll always say, like the ancient Hawaiians used to say, it didn't say something random, but for some reason it always went with what was going on as far as the problems go with the kids or even with Raymundo. But watching this show now as an adult, I started to realize a few things. I didn't really realize how much of a horrible friend Otto kind of was. He was a cocky, arrogant athlete, but he used to treat Twister and Sam like crap. But somehow they still, stuck with him or whatever. So I guess that's just on them. But till this day, the theme song for Rocket Power still gets me amped to this day. I'm not gonna sing because I'm not gonna embarrass myself. But with that being said, number 10 is Rocket Power. Now for me, number 9 is Darkwing Duck. Let's get dangerous. That is one of the best cartoon lines ever. To me, this is a very underrated cartoon, not only with its humor, but because it has one of the best theme songs ever, and the storytelling was also very underrated, in my opinion. He's a talking duck, but he's also an egotistical superhero who's actually out for the fame and the glory, which is the total opposite of what you would expect out of a superhero. So that appealed to me. It was a change of pace. It was something different. But even with all that, they did kind of touch on a little bit of reality because he was a father first and foremost, and his daughter's name was Gosling, and on many of occasions he would give up being a superhero just to make sure that she was safe. Now, the show was actually supposed to be a spinoff of DuckTales, and it was actually supposed to be about Launchpad, who, is his quote unquote sidekick. So he was supposed to be Darkwing Duck, but luckily and thankfully, the producers, they switched it up. The show went through a lot, for it to turn out the way it did. So, but all in all, it turned out to be a great show, and this is one of the Disney's best shows, in my opinion. It was a little bit darker than anyone has seen coming out of a Disney television outing before. And, the villains, they were much more sinister. Gizmo Duck is still one of my favorite. Even though him and Darkwing Duck did team up at times. You had Mega Bolt. You had the evil Darkwing Duck. It's just, this show is very great and underrated to me. So for number 9 is Darkwing Duck. Now, moving on to number 8 is Recess. Now, one of the things I remember the most about one Saturday morning was the awesome adventures of Gus, Gretchen, TJ Spinelli, Vince, and Mikey in the 4th grade at Third Street School. Now, the show, of course, primarily took place at recess, so they really wasn't just in class all that long. If they was, they'd be on their way out to recess. Now, you kind of had the typical stereotypes a little bit. Vince was the black athlete who wore jerseys and high top shoes. Gus and Gretchen was the nerds. TJ was the ringleader. Spinelli was the tough girl with the big boots on and the little pigtails. Mikey was the overweight, sensitive poet. But who had like a Barry White voice when he started to sing. I'll never forget the episode when he started singing "Nobody Knows the Trouble I've Seen." It just blew me away. But the supporting cast was also great. You had Lawson, who was either the 5th or 6th grader. I can't remember. But, he always used to just pick on TJ. So I will never forget the battle that they had when it came to Fort Tender. That still appeals to me. You had King Bob, who was one of my personal favorites. He was just sitting on top of the jungle gym, on top of this old dusty armchair with a hockey jersey, with the hockey stick, and he always used to want to say, "So shall it be written, so shall it be done." You had Menlo, the Diggers, you had Corn Chip Girl, Swinger Girl. You had the kindergartners who didn't wear clothes; they just walked around with diapers and their face was painted, and they had rulers, but they used to terrorize the older kids. Can't forget about Principal Prickly and Miss Finster, who till this day is the reason why I call people hooligans. If you don't know, just YouTube or Google Miss Finster and hooligans. You'll see what I'm talking about. But it's just a crap load of fun to watch. And for adults, there's actually messages about society in it, so it appeals to all different ages. And before I move on to number 7, I just want to say that my favorite episode, well, one of my favorite episodes would be the dodgeball episode when Gus, who I can't remember the kindergarten's name, but he was considered to be safety man because Gus was kind of the safe dude. But they end up having a dodgeball match. I think the 4th and the 5th graders for pretty much all the marbles, literally all the marbles. And Gus was known as El Diablo back at his old school because he used to do a lot of damage with dodgeballs. And they end up hitting the kindergarten. That pissed Gus off. He became El Diablo again, and he just did so much damage. I'll never forget that because when you think of Gus, you wouldn't think about that. So kudos to Recess. Number 7 is going to be the Boondocks. Back in 1999, debuted in newspapers, and it finally made its Cartoon Network in 2005. Now, for those who thought that the comic strip was controversial, now just imagine that everything they did within 30 minutes of the show. Like, they pulled no punches, nobody was off limits. I mean, President Obama, BET, Martin Luther King. There was nobody that was off limits. It pretty much followed Riley Hugh and Granddad, or Robert Freeman. That was pretty much the stars of the show. Uncle Ruckus was the controversial person of it. So that being said, that he actually was one of the most underrated characters in my opinion because he did make me laugh, even though some of the stuff he said was a little bit out of control. But you had Tom Dubois, who was a lawyer. You just had Stink Meaner, who for some reason every season will not die and just come back to get revenge on them. You had the guest stars. You had Charlie Murphy on it. You had Cat Williams, pretty much anybody you can think of. So the only reason why I have it number 7 is because of the fact that, to me, season 3 and 4 was a little bit lackluster, especially season 4, which was the last season, and Aaron McGruger didn't even want to be a part of it. And it was obvious with the writing and the storytelling that his presence was missed. But the first 2 seasons was great, and the fact that the Trial of R. Kelly episode till this day is one of my favorites because the fact that Adam West was R. Kelly's lawyer, just some of the stuff that was going on, they made a parody of the whole R. Kelly sex tape and stuff like that. It was just amazing to me. But all in all, though, the Boondocks was a great show, and the fact that they wasn't as scared to attack anybody who was out there, whether you're a public figure, a politician, a rapper, or anything like that. That's what made this show great for me. Now, number 6, I got The Simpsons. Now, I know what a lot of you guys are thinking. How is The Simpsons not number 1 or number 2? But actually, recently, FXX did a Simpsons marathon where they showed every episode of The Simpsons. And, I was watching it, and I was just like, oh, I like The Simpsons, but I just don't feel like I liked it as much as I did. It's not a knock on The Simpsons at all, but, that's the reason why I have it at number 6. But with that being said, the show debuted in 1989. Most of the craziness happened in Springfield. Every now and then they'll have some kind of interaction with the folks of Shelbyville, which never got old. But, all the cameos that they had in this show, Who's Who appeared, from Green Day to Red Hot Chili Peppers to anybody you can think of. Considering that this show is on its 25th or 26th season, which starts this month actually. There's pretty much no end in sight. Bart was pretty much the troublemaker. Homer and Bart, their interaction with each other always, was interesting to look at. And for me, all the Treehouse of Horror episodes that The Simpsons do every Halloween, it was just amazing to see. And the fact that every intro in The Simpsons, as long as this show has been out, every introduction in the show has been different. When they go sit on the couch, like, it's always a different way they end up getting to the couch. So for me, that says a lot about the creativity of the show. But with that being said, my number 6 is The Simpsons. Number 5, I have X-Men, the animated series. And this is one of the most faithful comic book show adaptations out there. This show is just phenomenal. Rather than just creating new storylines, most of the episodes was based on, events from the comics, like the Days of Future Past storyline, the Dark Phoenix saga, which was done so perfectly. And I like the fact that, even the smaller villains, they turned to shine. But I like the way they did Bishop and Cable and Forge, and people like that. To be honest with you, I guess my main gripe would be Jubilee, because to me her powers was just horrible. But every now and then they change a few details here and there, but mostly it's stuck to the adaptation. The main team consists of Professor X, Cyclops, Jean Grey, Wolverine, Beast, Storm, and my personal favorite character, Gambit. Rogue and Jubilee. At times the dialogue did get a little cheesy and cartoony, but it is, it's to be expected. But as far as the villains go, of course you got Magneto and Apocalypse, but the smaller villains like Vertigo and the Brood, they implemented them to the fact where they looked like they was a force to be reckoned with. And I do like the fact that they did touch on the fact that Juggernaut and Charles Xavier are related. They showed how Juggernaut became Juggernaut, and they even helped Juggernaut get his mutant powers back when he lost them. I don't want to spoil anything for you, but Mr. Sinister is probably one of my favorite. He was well portrayed in the series, and we even got an origins episode for him. It was modified because due to copyright and censorship on TV and stuff like that. But the fact that they did feel the need to give Mr. Sinister his origin story was great to me. So my number 5 is X-Men, the animated series. Number 4 would be Family Guy. This cartoon has been canceled so many times and brought back because I think the first time was around, one time was around 2005, and they were showing reruns for it. Fans loved it. They wrote notes to bring it back, so they brought it back. The theme for Family Guy is it got its obvious comparisons to The Simpsons and shows like that, and there's understandable because you have a fat dad, semi-attractive wife, with 2 kids and an animal, so which is Brian. But the show is very different. It's mostly known for its cutaway segments and stuff like that. Now, this is really not a show for kids to watch because of some of the humor and the jokes and things like that. There are a few episodes where it's appropriate for them to watch, but I would say this is more like a teenage type show, teenage and adult type show. To me, the Brian and Stewie Road 2 episodes, they're always well done, especially the Road to the Multiverse episodes that they did. It's just Google and YouTube that, because you won't be sorry. Just the way they treat Meg like crap, and she just deals with it. It's just stuff like that is what makes Family Guy great, and it is still continuing to this day. So my number 4 would be Family Guy. Now number 3 is Batman, the animated series. Now, if the Adam West live action show in the 60s, I want to say, is what got some of the older adult generation fans into Batman, then this animated series is what got the younger folks like myself into Batman. I read the comics and stuff like that, but seeing how perfectly they translated to TV is what made me just fall in love with Batman the animated series. And as far as villains go, of course, you got the Joker, Mr. Freeze, and stuff like that, and Penguin. But the way they gave shine to like Killer Croc and villains like that. And my favorite episodes of Batman the Animated Series was the Tragedy of Clayface episodes, which is pretty much, the story of Clayface, how he became how he is. It made you sympathize with him, and it was written perfectly. It is a fairly violent cartoon. Guns, knives, and other weapons make appearances, and all the characters handle conflicts mostly with violence instead of conversational skills. But that's what you would expect. Batman, considering his history, and I mean, just the pilot episode embodies everything that will make Batman so beloved by everybody, and it did that. The way the violence and the storylines was all handled made it to where anybody can enjoy it. The fights was violent yet kid friendly, and there was blood at times. But like I said, Batman the Animated Series, in my opinion, is one of the best shows out there. But it's only number three because I got two in front of that. And my number two actually would be kind of a recent cartoon per se, but it is Archer. Yes, I know it's kind of, cell shaded, but it's still considered a cartoon. But it follows the ISIS crew, Mallory, Archer, Lana, Cheryl, or Carol, depending on what season it's on, Pam, Cyril, Mr. Krieger, and Ray. It follows them. They're pretty much like James Bond type spy knockoffs, just to watch Archer's love Burt Reynolds get turned against him when Burt Reynolds started dating his mom, and the fact that they actually got Burt Reynolds to do the voice as himself, that should let how good the show is. But, Archer, whose code name is Duchess, which was named after his mom's dead dog, which is still funny to me, is one of the funniest things ever, just to see how much everybody hates Archer with a passion, especially Lana. But at the end of the day, they always rely on him to get them out of situations, even though most of the time he's the one that gets them into situations in the first place. But, just to see that, just to see how they've changed from season one to the end of season five, with Pam getting addicted to cocaine. She went from this fat, unattractive, crazy, sex deranged woman to now she's skinny, hot, but she's still addicted to cocaine. Cheryl, she's a country music star now. Ray has bionic legs. Krieger found out he was a clone, and he ended up killing his clones. So we think. And, just Lana, she has a baby now. Beginning of season 5, which was called Archer Vice, it took them out of ISIS, and it took them out of the spy thing, and it turned them into, they tried to smuggle and sell literally a ton of cocaine. And that's kind of how Pam got addicted to it, because she was eating and snorting and pretty much inhaling it in different ways possible. But, that didn't work out. So, spoiler alert, last episode, Lana had her baby, and Mallory found a way for them to be able to get their ISIS, their ISIS building back. So they're going to go back to the spy thing in season 6. But, like I said, it was just fun to watch them getting taken out of that element, considering that's what you're used to. But like I said, Archer is very fantastically written show. Everybody from the voice acting, everything is cool, from the cameos and stuff like that. Everything is done perfectly. So for me, my number 2 is Archer, but there can be only one at the top of this cartoon list, and it will be Spider-Man, the animated series. Now, this series came out in 1994, and it was pretty much the updated version of the 60s version of it. So, but just imagine being able to sense danger, crawl a wall, be strong enough to bend steel, be more agile than anybody. You would think you would, take that as a gift, but actually in the beginning he didn't. At first, when he first got his powers, he tried to use it to get some extra cash. So he became a wrestler. The dude stiffed him on some money. The dude got robbed. Peter let the robber get away, and then it turns out the dude that he let go ended up killing his Uncle Ben, and that's where the whole "with great power comes great responsibility" thing came into play. But just everything about this show is why it's a delight for me to watch, even to this day. Now, I didn't like the way it ended because it kind of just left us hanging. It didn't really just, to me, get like a real last episode. But, the way the villains were incorporated, Doc Ock, Rhino, Shocker, I like the whole Michael Morbius thing. You know, he had crossovers with the Fantastic Four, Captain America, people like that. A very underrated storyline for me in this series was the whole Black Cat. You know, when they showed how her Felicia Hardy, who became the Black Cat, you know, how she had father issues and what happened to her father, and you know how it turned out the way it did. So I really did like the way they handled that situation. But you know, yeah, crossovers with Blade. You know, the action on this thing was great. You know, Peter was cracking jokes like he usually do. I did like the Michael Morbius storyline. They did that perfectly, in my opinion, because you kind of sympathize with Michael and stuff like that. But all in all, Spider-Man the animated series is one of the best cartoons out there. And if it came on today, I would still watch it. I recently just went and watched all of them on YouTube. I literally binge watched Spider-Man the animated series just to do it. So, with that being said, Spider-Man the animated series will be #1 on this top 10 countdown. Like I said, this is part one. Part two will be coming really, really soon. So, with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed part one. Like I said, I will be getting you part two in a couple of weeks or so, depending on how people respond to this one. But with that being said, I am Dominic Barnes. You will be able to watch this on thescoopzone.com. Follow The Scoop on Twitter at @TweetTheScoop. Subscribe to the YouTube channels where I have plenty more top 10 countdowns. There's other videos on there as well. You know, follow the Google Plus page, and I will see y'all soon. Peace.